Hello and welcome to the third episode of Lessons from Rejections. Today we're joined by Professor Kate Laskowski from the Department of Evolution and Ecology. Hello Kate, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Well, my name is Kate Laskowski and I'm a behavioral ecologist. I'm a new faculty, so I'm still figuring out this world of academics. But, I've had my career so far and I've had to deal with a lot of rejections and setbacks all along the way. So I think all of us who've made it this far, probably anyone can speak a lot about this topic.
Great. So I contacted you to talk about a tweet you recently sent regarding not obtaining the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program Award whilst you were in graduate school. Can you start off by telling us a bit about the NSF GRFP?
Yeah, so the NSF GRFP is probably, I guess it's widely considered to be the most prestigious fellowship you can receive as a graduate student, as a PhD student. The goal of it is to fund people. So it's to fund promising students, and it gives you, I believe, 3 years of complete funding, including a very generous stipend. And so it's quite attractive, both from a professional point of view and that, it's really a badge of honor. But then also it's from a personal point of view of it gives you a bit of money.
It sounds like a great opportunity, and I bet a lot of work goes into preparing that proposal. How did you feel upon receiving your rejection?
Well, I don't know, angry, sad, upset, heartbroken. I mean, all of these feelings I think that all of us deal with. It sucks. It comes down to it hurts at a very personal level because it does feel like somehow you don't measure up. So it's really hard not to take it personally. I think in fact, it's impossible not to take it personally. But then, the goal is sort of to start sifting through those emotions and getting past that initial heartbreak phase and learn what you can from the experience and apply it to the next step in hopes that maybe you'll have a little bit better luck next time.
Do you still remember any of the reviewer comments you received from your application?
The honest answer is no. I don't know if that's like a purposeful forgetting, in the sense my brain is protecting myself, or I've just had so many letdowns since then that new ones have taken up that brain space, which is quite possible. So the interesting thing actually is that I have now been on the other side of the table. I have acted as a reviewer for the GRFP, and I can safely say that it is a very difficult task to review these proposals because by and large, they're all very good. And so reviewers are really looking for things to ding you on because we have to make really tough choices. And so I know that the reviews that students get back are often really frustrating, and they are frustrating. They're frustrating for everyone because there's just not enough money to give to everyone who deserves it.
Thanks, that's really interesting insight. Returning to your application, how did you move on from this rejection? Were there people who you received help or guidance from?
So I think one of the things that contributes to my success is whenever I get a rejection from something, I get really upset and I cry about it for a few days and it's very painful. But then I've been able to cultivate my anger. So it's sort of this like prove you wrong mentality that I really, honestly, now I've learned to embrace it because it gives me like the week after I get a rejection, it pisses me off and I just like go and throw myself into a flurry of productivity with the goal of proving this reviewer wrong. And I mean, it's kind of a silly way to think about it, but you got to do whatever it is to protect yourself and make the best of a bad situation that you get yourself in. And then in terms of who helped me, certainly my supervisor was pretty integral in this. That was Allison Bell at the University of Illinois. And I think her calmness in the face of this really helped me realize like, this is just one stepping stone on a very long path. And so this won't make or break me in any way. And so don't put the weight of the world on your shoulders for like any one thing.
Can you tell us any more about these conversations you had with your mentor?
Honestly, it was sort of like, okay, we talk about it and she reiterated of like, this sucks, Kate, but it happens. It's honestly not so much in your control. You did the best you could and then everything else, you have no control over it. So let's move on. It wasn't like the whole semester was ruined. If anything, it was just like, a week of pain and then a week of anger and then, all right, let's get back to work.
Despite the rejection, can you tell us about any positives you took away from the experience?
I think the act of applying for anything like this is in itself valuable because it helps you clarify your own ideas. Writing is thinking. The more you have to think about your ideas thoughtfully and carefully and with a lot of clarity, having to put together a coherent argument. Even if that proposal isn't funded, it's going to help you.
Do you think being unsuccessful in this application affected your graduate studies?
I don't know. No. It's tough to say. I don't know how it would have affected me, but I doubt it would have had a major effect one way or the other, quite honestly.
So looking at that question from a different angle, do you think the studies of your graduate students would be affected by being awarded the NSF GRFP?
No, I don't, honestly, because the GRFP is really designed to fund a person, and the majority of the money goes to their stipend, and they're going to get a stipend no matter what. Of course, it makes their life easier because they don't have to TA or RA or anything like this. In fact, I have 2 grad students who are starting with me this fall, and they both applied for GRFPs, and neither one was successful. That sucks, but I'm still super excited to have them come to my lab. It didn't change my opinion of them in any way. I still have complete confidence in their success and ability to get work done.
So given the setbacks you've encountered, have you ever been tempted by a different career path?
No, the honest answer is that every step of my career and my schooling, I just became more and more convinced that academic research was the path for me. We hear these stories of people who we deem are successful in academia. And I think it's important to remember that this is all survivorship bias. You only hear from the people who, quote unquote, made it. We're missing out on lots of stories of people who have taken other paths. And there is no one path to success. There's lots of people out there who, are doing different things now. And I think they're probably just as happy and doing as many cool things as I am.
From your career, is there anything you have learned from your experiences regarding rejection and professional criticism that you would like to share with us?
That it sucks. It's not fun to deal with. It's not fun to receive it, but it's absolutely necessary. By and large, I think most people in this career, we give criticism. The vast majority of us do it with the right intentions, which is we want to help people. We want to, bring up new ideas. We want to challenge the way we think. And these are all good reasons. So getting criticism is really tough, but it's also very necessary. Learning coping mechanisms of how to deal with that early on is pretty critical. It's always going to hurt. You're never going to be able to get past the fact that it's going to hurt your feelings when you get rejected. But I think learning to process those feelings and move past them as quickly as you safely can is really where you need to focus your energy.
Do you regularly discuss rejections and failures in your workplace? Do you wish it happened more?
The short answer is yes. I talk about them both with my colleagues in my department. In every lab I've been in, I've talked about it with my lab mates and with my supervisor. I talk about it, I have multiple support groups in terms of colleagues and peers that I value and trust. So yeah, I think talking about these sorts of things is important. So you realize that it really isn't personal. No one will always be successful all the time. And so just getting yourself more and more used to that idea seems like it has to be a good thing.
How are these support groups established?
For me, I guess they've just kind of established themselves in the sense my best friend is a woman that I went to grad school with. Kind of have this shared experience of us both getting rejected for a lot of the same things at the same time, kind of bonds you together. They're your friends. They're your people that you talk to, and you feel comfortable being open and vulnerable to them.
Looking back, is there anything you either wish you knew before starting or learned quicker regarding rejection and negative feedback?
The only thing you have to learn is that it's absolutely unavoidable. There is no way you can be successful in any career without getting negative feedback at some point. And if you're not getting negative feedback, to me, it seems you're doing something wrong in the sense you're not aiming high enough. I learned very quickly that I like to get frequent, small feedback. If I get small feedback every so often, those are things that I can improve and work on. Versus if I spend months and months babying this manuscript until I feel like it's absolutely perfect and I've invested so much in it, and then you get negative feedback, it feels a lot more painful because you're far more personally invested in it. And so for me, that's a method that's worked really well. Constant, incremental, small feedback.
And finally, what advice would you have for graduate students applying for early career fellowships in the future?
My advice is to know that there is so much that is out of your control. You can baby your proposal or your grant as much as you want, and you can make it perfect in your eyes. But the fact of the matter is that there's never enough money for everyone, so cuts have to be made somewhere. You never know who you're applying against. There's so much stochasticity and luck involved that it's not a reflection of you in any way. And so do the best that you can and then forget about it. And the other thing I would say is really important is to figure out how you cope quickly. Figure out like what makes you upset and how do you get yourself out of the upset mode and back into productivity mode. And that's something that's very personal and requires a lot of like honesty and self-insight. But the quicker you can figure that out and learn to embrace that, I think the better off you'll be.
Thank you very much, Kate, for sharing these great stories and pieces of advice. And thank you very much to the listeners for joining us in this 3-part podcast called Lessons from Rejections. I hope that you find the stories and advice provided useful in your future careers. My name is Kyle Fletcher, and this podcast was produced as part of my Professors for the Future Fellowship, awarded by the UC Davis Graduate Studies GradPathways Institute for Professional Development.